Hey, this is Mike McAdam for Gen X Guitar. Today, I'm going to teach you how to sound like you're drunk when you're playing the guitar, even if you're not, or maybe just a little bit. So today I want to talk about something that I call drunken phrasing. And maybe someone calls it something else. I don't know. That's what I call it, and that's what you're going to call it. But the idea of this is a lot of times we talk about when we're playing music, we use notes to kind of step outside. But today we're going to talk about how to use rhythm to do this. Basically, what I describe this as is just purposely stepping out of time. It's almost like seasick sounding for a second. And this could be a little tricky because you do too much of it, it starts to sound a little too out. And if you're having rhythmic trouble to start off with, then this is really going to be a problem. So let me kind of iterate what I'm talking about here. So if I have a certain riff, say this. So I have this idea. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to play some basic eighth notes over it, right? I'm going to take the same idea and play quarter note triplets, and that's going to get us close to what I'm looking to do with the drunken phrasing. That's going to sound like this. Okay, so if I exaggerate that, what I'm going to do with this next example is I'm going to start off just improvising something, and rhythmically it's going to sound very in and very normal. And then I'm going to take this drunken phrasing and start playing against the time. And that's going to sound like this. So for that example, I was playing primarily quarter note triplets, but for some of it, I really pushed the beat forward, pulled some of it back. So when you do that, it creates this very uneasy feeling. I'm going to do it one more time, and then I'll resolve back to something a little more normal. It's going to sound like this. So in that example, start off with a typical blues lick, took it out a little bit, and then brought it back with things that were rhythmically a little more normal. So you have to be careful with this because, like I said, in my opinion, if you start doing it too much, it sounds off. The next step you can do with this is start doing it with notes that are out. So a lot of times, I'll give you a perfect example. If I'm playing in the key of A, I'm playing the A minor pentatonic scale. What I could do is I could play it a half step higher to create some tension and then resolve it. It's going to sound like this. So in that example, I just played the A minor pentatonic scale for a moment, moved it up to B flat, resolved it back to A. Easy trick you can do. But now what I'm going to do is just combine those two ideas. I'm going to have it sound really out because I'm going to play those B flat notes over A minor. And I'm also going to rhythmically have it step out. It's going to sound like this. So I'm not typically an out player, but that last example is probably a little further than I would normally go, but it just gives you an idea of what's possible. So a lot of times this kind of goes back to where you play on the beat, behind the beat. That's a whole different discussion, but I'll get into it a little bit. I know if you listen to a lot of jazz, especially a great example I give is if playing behind the beat, most jazz music is behind the beat. If you listen to Freddie Hubbard's trumpet solo in a song called Stolen Moments, especially the second chorus, you really hear him pulling back some of his lines against the time. If you listen to D'Angelo, for example, a lot of his grooves are very behind the beat. They almost sound like they're seasick a lot of the times. So it gives you an idea of how to play along with this. You have a lot of rock music, punk music especially, where they almost sound like they're trying to make the drummer go faster because everyone's playing so on top of the beat. So it's just different things to consider. So there's a story, a friend of mine won a guitar lesson with Steve Vai about a decade ago. And I guess he had a student who bid on this. It was for charity. You get a lesson with Steve. So this student gave it to this friend of mine who is his teacher, and he got flown out to LA and met with Steve and hung out with him for a while, and they sat down and started playing. Now, mind you, this guy had been to BU, he'd been to Berkeley, he was a pretty accomplished musician, but him and Steve sat down and they just started playing basic rhythms, and Steve was really focused on where does the note sit? Is it behind the beat, on top of the beat? And just made him start thinking about these things in a way that he had never thought of before. So sometimes we look for all these highfalutin musical concepts like this scale, this mode, playing over this thing, whatever. But your rhythm is such an important part of it. So it's good to look at some of these things and try to find different ways to apply them. Sometimes you have people trying to take different rare variations. Sometimes you have people who are obsessed with taking, 5/4, 3/4, different things like that. But this is a way where you can just interject some rhythmic spice into your playing and maybe you get some use out of it. For gear today, I am using this 54 Custom Shop reissue Gibson Les Paul with P90s. This is a slightly underused asset for me. I really like this guitar a lot. It is a big fat neck on it. It's definitely a big boy's guitar as far as the neck goes, but I'm a sucker for P90s. I love the way they sound, and gold looks pretty cool. For amp, we're using Fender Princeton 71 non-reverb. This amp works great on this channel. I'm also using a Nobles ODR1, which is kind of our house overdrive pedal, and for the microphones we're using a Royer 121 and a Unidyne SM57. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Take this idea, run with it, let me know how you make out, talk about it in the comments. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. We're trying to grow this channel, and every like and subscription helps tremendously, so please consider doing so. In the meantime, I'm Mike. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching Gen X Guitar.